Hello, and a massive welcome to ESL Listening Practice. It is wonderful to have you with us today.
It really is.
Today, we're doing something a little bit different. Usually when we talk about learning English or, preparing for those massive life-changing exams like the IELTS, the TOEFL, or the Cambridge exams, we focus entirely on the mechanics.
But today, we are going to look at the invisible side of test taking. We are looking at the mental game. Because you can have the best vocabulary in the world, you can know every single grammar rule in the textbook, but if your mind isn't in the right place when that clock starts ticking, none of that matters. It is it's like having a Ferrari but no keys to start the engine. The potential is all there, but you can't access it.
That is the core problem we are tackling today. It is that specific sinking feeling of walking into an exam room, feeling fully prepared.
You've done the work.
You have done the work. You've studied for months. You have flashcards coming out of your ears. You feel ready. But then you sit down. The examiner says start, and suddenly just blank. Your brain just freezes. And it's such a tragedy because the knowledge is there somewhere, but you just cannot reach it.
It is a terrifying feeling, and I think it is important to say right off the bat that it is incredibly common. So if you're listening and this sounds familiar, you are not alone.
Not at all.
What we are looking at today is the psychology and the biology behind why this happens. We want to unpack the phenomenon of overthinking. We want to understand how anxiety and overanalysis can actually destroy your exam score, even if you know the English perfectly well. This is all about the gap between your potential and your performance.
That is the key distinction, isn't it? It is not about not knowing the answer.
No.
It is about the anxiety acting like a wall between you and the answer you already have.
Precisely.
So our mission today is to break down exactly why this happens, the science of it, the psychology of it, and most importantly, give you some really actionable strategies to stop it.
Real tools you can use.
Yes. This is advice for every single English learner who has ever felt that panic rising during a test. We want to help you get out of your own way.
Absolutely. And to start, I think we need to look at what we can call the anatomy of the freeze.
The anatomy of the freeze, okay.
We need to really understand what is physically and mentally happening in those first few minutes when things start to go wrong. Because it's not just a vague feeling. It is a full-body physiological cascade.
Okay, so let's set the scene vividly for everyone listening. You are in the room. It is quiet. That specific, heavy silence of an exam hall.
You can hear a pin drop.
Right. Maybe you can hear the clock ticking on the wall, or the rustle of people turning pages, or someone coughing nervously 3 rows back. It's a very particular soundscape.
It is.
And you look at the first question. The reaction starts physically. It isn't just a thought. It is a body sensation first, right?
Right. It usually starts with the amygdala. Now, that is the part of your brain that's responsible for threat detection. Before you even consciously realize you are nervous, your amygdala has slammed a big red panic button.
Wow, so it's happening before I'm even aware of it.
It's subconscious, and your heart starts racing. That's usually the first sign people notice. Your pulse goes way up. Your palms might get sweaty, your breathing gets shallow.
And then there is this weird visual disconnect that happens.
Tell me about that.
It's like you read the question, but the words don't seem to register. We have seen students read the same exact question 5, 6, 7 times without understanding it.
Oh, absolutely. I have been there. You read the sentence, and the words are English words you know perfectly well.
Right, simple words.
But when you put them together, in that moment, under that pressure, they just look like nonsense. It is like looking at a foreign script all of a sudden.
Yes. You see the shapes of the letters, but the meaning doesn't download into your brain. What is that?
That is because your working memory is being hijacked. We will get into the specific biology of that later. But the effect is that your RAM, to use a computer analogy, is full.
It's full of junk files.
It's full of anxiety, so there's no space left for reading comprehension. And that is where the shift in perception happens. And this is a really crucial point.
Okay.
Simple answers suddenly feel confusing. It is not that the question is hard. It is that your perception of difficulty has shifted.
Yeah.
You lose the ability to judge what is easy and what is difficult.
And that is the tragedy of the situation. That is why we call it a silent problem. If you make a grammar mistake, a teacher can see it on the paper. They can say, oh, look, you used the wrong verb tense here. Let's practice that. It's visible. But this anxiety, It ruins your results quietly. No one sees it happening except you inside your own head. You are screaming internally, but externally you're just sitting there staring at a page.
That is right. The examiner just marks the answer wrong. They don't know that you actually knew the answer but just couldn't access it.
They can't see the struggle.
They assume it is a lack of knowledge. And this leads us to the mechanism of overthinking itself. How does overthinking actually change the test? Because it really does change the test.
It changes the rules of the game.
It changes the test from an English assessment into a psychological battleground.
Well, the way I see it, and tell me if this resonates, is that overthinking turns easy questions into hard ones.
That is the perfect way to put it.
It just transforms the difficulty of the paper.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the internal monologue. We have all had this little voice in our heads.
Oh, yes. The little demon on your shoulder.
Right. You look at a question, and the answer seems obvious.
Yeah.
Let's say it is a multiple choice question, and option A looks perfect. It matches the text, the keywords are there, everything lines up.
Your gut says A.
Your gut says A. But then the overthinking kicks in. The voice starts whispering.
And the first thing the voice says is, wait, is this too easy?
That is the overthinker's doubt. You think, this is an important exam. I paid a lot of money for this. It is supposed to be difficult.
Right, I'm supposed to be struggling.
Exactly. If the answer looks this obvious, I must be missing something. I must be being naive.
And then once that doubt is in your head, the next thought is, maybe it is a trick.
Maybe it's a trick. And that is the killer. Once you start looking for a trick that isn't there, you are engaging your brain in a completely different way. You are not testing your English anymore. You are testing your paranoia. You are looking for hidden meanings, double negatives that don't exist, or complex traps that the examiner never even set.
You're inventing a harder question than the one on the page.
You're creating a conspiracy. And finally, the voice says, what if I'm wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And that fear of being wrong just paralyzes you. You start imagining the consequences of being wrong. If I get this wrong, I won't get the score, I won't get the visa, I won't get into university. You're not thinking about the question anymore. You're thinking about your entire future.
And here's the consequence. And this is backed by so much data on test-taking patterns.
What does the data show?
Students often change correct answers to wrong ones.
Oh, that's painful.
It's devastating. They had the right answer. Their first instinct was correct. But because of that internal monologue, it's too easy, it's a trick, they erase the correct answer and circle the wrong one. They literally talk themselves out of the point.
To think that you had the point and you gave it away, it is almost worse than not knowing it at all. It is. And as teachers, this is something we see constantly. Points are often lost, not because of a lack of English knowledge. The student knows the vocabulary. They understand the grammar.
The knowledge is there.
The knowledge is there. Points are lost because of overanalysis. They are lost because the student didn't trust their own competence.
So we have talked about the thoughts, the is it a trick thoughts, but I want to go deeper into the biology of this.
Okay.
Because we mentioned earlier that this isn't just a habit, it is a brain state. We need to talk about the neuroscience of stress. I think understanding the hardware of the brain helps us forgive ourselves a little bit for struggling with this.
This is where it gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
And you were right. Understanding this helps you realize it is not your fault. It is your biology.
So it's not a character flaw.
Not at all. The brain effectively have two main modes that are relevant here. We can call them simply thinking mode and survival mode.
Okay, let's break those down. Thinking mode versus survival mode. What is happening in the brain during thinking mode?
Thinking mode is where you want to be. This is when your prefrontal cortex is in charge.
The PFC.
The PFC, yes. It's like the CEO of the brain. It sits right behind your forehead. This is the part of the brain that handles logic, complex reasoning, language processing, impulse control, and crucially, memory retrieval.
So this is my smart brain.
This is your smart brain. When you are calm, practicing at home with a cup of tea, you are in thinking mode. Your brain works clearly and logically because the CEO is at the desk making decisions.
Right. That is the mode where you can remember that complex vocabulary word you learned last week, or you can, navigate a complicated grammar structure like the third conditional without sweating.
Exactly. But the prefrontal cortex is expensive to run. It uses a lot of energy, and it is very sensitive to chemical changes in the body.
Okay, so that's thinking mode. What's survival mode?
Survival mode is controlled by the limbic system, specifically that part we mentioned before, the amygdala. This is an ancient primal reaction to a threat.
Primal is the key word there.
Very. And the problem is, your brain doesn't always distinguish between different types of threats.
So, to the brain, A difficult TOEFL reading passage is the same as a physical danger, like a predator.
In terms of the chemical reaction, yes.
Yeah.
Fundamentally. The brain is an ancient survival machine. It hasn't really evolved to understand the concept of standardized testing.
Right. There were no IELTS exams on the savannah.
None. So when overthinking starts or when you feel that pressure, the amygdala perceives the threat. It could be a threat to your status, your future, or your self-worth, and it pushes you from thinking mode into survival mode.
It hijacks the system.
The analogy we often use is comparing this state to trying to solve a math problem while being chased by a tiger.
I love that image. Trying to do math while running from a tiger. It sounds ridiculous, but it makes so much sense.
It sounds funny, but think about what your brain prioritizes in that situation. If a tiger is chasing you, does your brain care about the past perfect tense?
No. It cares about running. It cares about climbing a tree. It cares about not being eaten.
Exactly. It prioritizes survival, not the exam. So biologically, what happens is a flood of stress hormones.
Like adrenaline.
Adrenaline and cortisol, mainly. These hormones are designed to help you fight or flee. They send blood to your large muscles, your arms and legs, and to your lungs.
To get you ready for action.
Physical action. But they have a specific effect on the brain. They shut down the non-essential functions. And unfortunately, complex language processing and memory access are considered non-essential when you're running for your life.
So that explains the disappearing act we see. That feeling where answers you knew perfectly yesterday or even 10 minutes ago in the car on the way to the exam suddenly vanish. It feels like someone wiped the hard drive.
Yes, but they haven't left your brain. You haven't forgotten them in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
They are just blocked.
So the file is still there, I just can't open it.
The file is there, but the connection is down. The stress hormones, particularly cortisol, create what is effectively a chemical wall between your conscious mind and that information stored in your hippocampus.
Wow.
Focus drops, and memory access becomes significantly harder. The technical term is cortical inhibition. Your brain is literally inhibiting the cortex, the thinking part, to save energy for running away.
It really validates that feeling of going blank. It is not that you are stupid or you didn't study enough.
Not at all.
It is that you are in a biological state that prevents high-level thinking. It is like trying to load a complex web page when you have no Wi-Fi signal.
That's a perfect analogy.
The website exists, but you can't get to it.
Precisely. And once you understand that, you can stop beating yourself up about it and start managing it. You stop thinking, I'm bad at English, and start thinking, my Wi-Fi is down, I need to reset the router.
Okay, that's a much more productive mindset.
But before we get to the management, the how to reset the router, we need to look at the trap that keeps us in this state. Because once you are in survival mode, it is hard to get out. We call it the time loop.
The time loop. This sounds like a sci-fi movie plot, but it is a very real, very painful experience in the exam hall.
It is.
Let's break down this vicious cycle because I think every listener will recognize this sequence.
Okay, so remember, you are in the exam, you are nervous, your cortisol is already rising, you read a question. Let's say it is a reading comprehension question about bee colonies. That is step one.
Okay, reading the question.
But because you are nervous, you doubt your understanding. Your brain is a little foggy. You think, did I read that right? Did it say bees pollinate or did it say bees populate? That is step two, doubt.
And because of that doubt, you reread it. Step three, you go back to the beginning of the sentence.
Right, you reread it. But now remember, you are in survival mode. Your peripheral vision has narrowed. We call that tunnel vision. And your working memory is glitching. So the words aren't sinking in.
You're just looking at shapes again.
You're just looking at shapes. You read the sentence, but it is just noise. So now you worry about not understanding, oh my God, I read it twice and I still don't get it. I'm failing. That is step four. The worry kicks in.
And then panic sets in. So what do? You reread it again. I have to get this. I have to understand.
Exactly. Read, doubt, reread, worry, reread again. It is a loop, a closed loop. And the cost of this loop is time. Time is just bleeding away while you are stuck on this one question.
And time is the most precious resource in an exam like the IELTS or TOEFL. You don't have infinite time. You barely have enough time as it is.
No, you don't. In this void, minutes just disappear. You might spend 5 or 6 minutes on a single multiple choice question that should have taken 1 minute, maybe 90 seconds.
I've seen it.
I've seen students look up the clock and realize they spent 15 minutes on one paragraph, and they're just in a state of shock.
And this creates a compounding effect, doesn't it? It is like interest on a debt. The problem gets bigger over time.
It absolutely does, because suddenly you look at the clock. You see you have wasted time. So now time pressure increases.
Right.
And what does increased pressure do? It increases anxiety. And what does increased anxiety do?
It floods the system with more cortisol,
pushing you deeper into survival mode, which then worsens the loop. It makes it even harder to read the next question.
It is a downward spiral. The more you worry, the less time you have, which makes you worry more, which makes you less capable of answering. It is a complete nightmare.
Exactly. And let's contrast this with the confident student. And I want to be clear here. The confident student isn't necessarily smarter.
That's a key point.
They might have the exact same level of English vocabulary and grammar as the overthinker. The difference isn't knowledge.
It's about momentum.
It's entirely about momentum. The confident student reads, picks the best answer they can see, and moves on. They don't get stuck in the loop.
So if they don't understand something, what do?
If they don't understand a sentence, they skip it, or they make an educated guess and they flag it to come back to later. The difference isn't always knowledge. It is the refusal to get stuck.
They accept imperfection in exchange for progress.
It is the ability to manage the flow of the exam, not just the content.
Now, this brings us to something that I found really surprising when we were looking into this topic.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to think that the students who struggle the most with anxiety are the ones who aren't prepared. You know, student who didn't study, who partied all night, so they are nervous because they genuinely don't know the answer.
Right. That seems logical.
But my experience and the general consensus suggests the complete opposite.
This is the paradox of the high achiever, and it is a very counterintuitive fact.
So what is it?
Good students, high achievers, the ones who do all the homework, who color code their notes, who get good grades in class, often struggle more with overthinking than less prepared students.
Why is that? That seems so backwards. You would think being prepared would make you calm. You would think, I know this, so I will be fine.
You would think so. But let's look at the psychology of the high achiever. There are three main drivers here. First, they care deeply about the results.
The stakes are higher for them.
The stakes are incredibly high. This exam matters to them. It is for a university entrance, or a job, or migration. They have invested so much of their identity into this outcome.
Right. It is not just a test. It is their future. It is a validation of all that hard work they've put in.
Exactly. Second, they have a deep desire to be perfect. High achievers are used to getting everything right. They're uncomfortable with ambiguity.
They don't like gray areas.
They hate gray areas. They're used to being the person who knows the answer. And third, and this is linked to the second point, they have a strong fear of mistakes.
A mistake feels like a personal failing.
Yes. A mistake feels like a failure of character, not just a lost point. To a high achiever, getting a question wrong feels like saying, I am not who I thought I was.
So this leads to what we call the perfectionism trap.
That's it. Because they want 100%, they question every single choice. They don't just want the right answer, they want to be certain it is the right answer.
That's a huge burden.
It is. But in a language exam, especially at the higher levels like C1 or C2, sometimes there is a bit of ambiguity. Sometimes you have to make a best guess. The high achiever hates guessing. It feels like cheating.
They want mathematical certainty in a language test. They want to prove it like a theorem.
Precisely. And they will sit there, staring at the question, trying to find that certainty, while the clock ticks down, down, down.
And meanwhile, the B student, or even the C student who is used to scraping by, is just guessing and moving on. The C student is comfortable with not knowing. Right. They've made peace with imperfection.
They think, I don't know, probably B, and they turn the page. They might actually score higher simply because they finished the paper.
So what is the reality check here? What do these high-achieving students need to hear to break this mindset?
They need to remember that exams reward clarity and completion, not perfection.
Say that again, that's important.
Exams reward clarity and completion, not perfection. You do not need 100% to get a great score. You can get a few questions wrong and still get a band 8 or a band 9. You could drop points and still pass with flying colors.
That is really important advice for the B2 learner listening right now. Sometimes good enough is the path to a high score, whereas seeking perfect leads to the spiral.
Absolutely. If you are aiming for perfection, you will freeze. If you aim for good enough to move on, you will finish the test. And finishing the test with a few guesses is always better than running out of time with a blank page.
You have to let go of the ego that demands perfection.
That's a huge part of it.
Okay, so we have diagnosed the problem. We know it is physical, the amygdala hijack. We know it is a survival mechanism, the fight or flight response. And we know it affects high achievers the most because of the pressure they put on themselves. Now, let's get practical. How do we stop it? We have 4 actionable strategies to discuss.
Yes. And these are strategies you can use in the exam room right in the moment when the panic starts. You don't need weeks of therapy. You can use these immediately.
Okay, that's what people need to hear. So strategy number 1, trust your first answer.
This is a classic for a reason. The advice is clear. Your gut instinct is usually right.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. What if my gut is wrong? How can I trust a feeling? That sounds unscientific.
It feels like a feeling, but it is actually implicit memory. It is your subconscious processing.
Okay, unpack that.
It goes back to the thinking mode versus survival mode. Your first reaction, that split second when you read the question and think it's B, that comes from your subconscious knowledge.
Oh.
It comes from the training you have done for months. It comes from all those flashcards and practice tests. It comes from thinking mode, before the anxiety has had time to wake up and start whispering in your ear.
So it is the pre-doubt answer.
Exactly. The doubt that comes seconds later. But wait, is it a trick? What about this exception? That is the survival mode kicking in. That is the anxiety talking, not your English knowledge.
So the first instinct is knowledge. The second thought is fear.
In many cases, yes. So statistically, your first answer is the one that is based on language ability. The changes you make later are often based on fear and second guessing.
So the rule is, unless you find concrete evidence that you were wrong, like you realize you misread the word not or always, you should stick with your gut.
Yes. If you are just feeling unsure, stick with the first choice. Only change it if you have a logical evidence-based reason, like, oh, I didn't see that word. If it is just a vague feeling of maybe, don't touch it.
That takes a lot of discipline.
It does. You have to practice trusting yourself.
Okay, strategy number 2, the move on rule.
This connects directly to breaking that time loop we talked about.
Right.
The advice is simple. If you are stuck, move on and return later.
It sounds simple, but honestly, it is so hard to do in the moment. It feels like giving up. It feels like admitting defeat on that question. My ego doesn't like it.
It does feel like giving up, but you have to reframe it. It is not giving up. It is strategic pacing.
Strategic pacing.
Think of yourself as a general in a battle. You don't lose the whole war just to win one tiny, insignificant hill. If you stay on a hard question, you are feeding the anxiety. You are letting the loop get stronger. By moving on, you break the loop.
You starve the anxiety.
You starve it, and you keep the momentum going.
Okay.
You go to the next question, maybe it is easier. You answer it. You get a little hit of dopamine, the chemical of success.
Yeah.
Your confidence comes back. You answer 3 more questions. Now you are back in thinking mode. Your brain has calmed down.
And when you come back to that difficult question later,
When you return to that hard question later, you might find it obvious because your brain is calm again. Your perspective has shifted.
so moving on is actually a way to reset your brain. It is not abandoning the question. It is putting it on hold until your brain is ready for it.
It is. It is prioritizing the easy points so you don't sacrifice them for one hard point. You bank the easy points first.
I like that. Bank the easy points. Okay. Strategy number 3 is a physical technique. The 10-second breath.
This is my favorite because it addresses the biology directly. It's a manual override.
A manual override. Okay.
The technique is, when you feel that panic rising, stop. Just stop everything. Put your pencil down on the desk and breathe slowly for 10 seconds. In through your nose, out through your mouth.
Now, I can hear listeners thinking, I don't have 10 seconds. The clock is ticking. Every second counts. It sounds crazy to stop working during a timed exam.
I know. It feels completely counterintuitive to stop when you are rushing. But think about the investment. It's a 10-second investment for a huge return.
Explain that return.
If you spend 10 seconds breathing, you can manually switch your brain from survival mode back to thinking mode.
How does that actually work? Is it just distracting yourself from the panic?
No. It is physiological. It's not just a mental trick. Deep, slow breathing stimulates the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve.
This is a major nerve that runs from your brain down to your gut.
Okay.
Stimulating it sends a powerful signal to your body. We are not running from a tiger. We are safe.
It's a safety signal.
It effectively tells the adrenal glands to stop pumping cortisol. It lowers the heart rate. It literally clears the fog from your brain.
So you invest 10 seconds to get your brain back online.
Exactly. You lose 10 seconds of time, but you gain back the next 10 minutes of clear thinking. If you don't breathe, you might spend the next 10 minutes staring blankly at the page, achieving nothing.
That's a great trade.
So the 10-second investment pays off huge dividends in terms of cognitive performance.
I love that. It is a biological reset button.
Okay, strategy number 4, focus tunnel vision. This addresses that feeling of overwhelm. Often students sit there and they think about the whole exam.
Oh, yeah.
I have 40 questions to do. Then I have an essay to write. And after that, the speaking test. I have to get a band 7. If I don't get a band 7, I can't go to Canada.
It is too big. It is crushing. You are carrying the weight of the whole world on your shoulders in that moment.
It's massive.
Yeah.
The brain can't handle that much pressure. It just shuts down. The advice is focus on one question, not the whole exam, just the one in front of you.
So you put blinders on like a horse in a race?
Yes, literally. Cover the other questions with your hand or a piece of paper if you have to. Tell yourself, my only job in the entire universe right now is to answer question 15. Nothing else exists.
That makes it manageable. It shrinks the problem.
Exactly. Looking at the whole exam creates overwhelm. Looking at one question is solvable. You solve it, then you move to the next one. You eat the elephant one bite at a time. You shrink the challenge down to something your brain can actually handle.
So if we summarize the strategy section, there is a core philosophy here. It really sums up everything we have discussed. Confidence saves more points than extra thinking.
That is the golden rule. Confidence, which is really the ability to trust yourself, to keep moving, to stay calm, will get you a higher score than sitting there and overanalyzing every detail until your brain melts down.
It really changes how we should approach our study, doesn't it? We spend so much time studying words and grammar rules.
As we should.
As we should, but maybe we need to practice letting go just as much.
We do. We need to practice the skill of decisiveness, the skill of staying calm under pressure. When you are doing practice tests at home, don't just check your answers at the end.
What should you check?
Check your state of mind.
Oh.
Ask yourself, at what point did I get panicked? Where did I get stuck in a loop? Practice the breathing. Practice the moving on. Treat the mental skills as seriously as the grammar skills.
That's a paradigm shift for a lot of students.
It has to be.
As we wrap up this session, I want to leave our listeners with the big truth from our discussion today. And this is something I want you to write down if you can, or just really let it sink in.
Okay.
Exams do not test how much you worry. They test what you know.
It is such a powerful statement. We often feel like worrying shows we care.
Yeah.
You know, if we worry, it means we're taking it seriously. We feel guilty if we aren't stressed.
Right, like being calm means you don't care enough.
Exactly. But the exam paper doesn't record your worry. It doesn't have a sensor for anxiety. It only records your answers. The worrying does nothing to help. It only hurts.
And the final contrast to keep in mind is this. Overthinking hides ability. Calm reveals it.
That is the takeaway.
Yeah.
You already have the ability. If you have been studying, the English is in there. It is stored in your neurons.
It's not gone.
It's not gone. Overthinking is the fog that hides it. Your job on exam day is not to learn more English. You can't learn more English in the exam room. Your job is to clear the fog so the examiner can see what you already know.
So our final encouragement to you listening is this. Practice being calm. Treat it like a skill.
Like practicing verb tenses.
Exactly. When you are doing a practice test at home, practice the 10-second breath. Practice moving on when you get stuck. Train your brain to handle the stress just like you train it to handle the grammar.
And remind yourself that you have done the work. You have put in the hours. Now you just need to get out of your own way and let your brain do what it knows how to do. Trust your training.
And here is a provocative thought to leave you with today. We spend hundreds of hours studying textbooks. We spend, sometimes thousands of dollars on courses.
A huge investment.
But if we spent just as much time managing our stress as we do studying grammar, how much higher would our scores be?
It is a question worth asking. Maybe the key to that next band score isn't a new textbook or another vocabulary list. Maybe it is just a deep breath and a bit of trust in yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us on ESL Listening Practice today. We hope this helps you not just with your English, but with the mental game of the exam. Good luck with your studies, keep calm, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone. Trust your gut.